definitions of reception to get us started. First, from the Dictionary of the Ecumenical Movement. Reception is the gradual and mutual acceptance by the churches of the results of ecumenical dialogues. I draw your attention to the word gradual. We will be about this for a long time. Sister Lorelei, in an address delivered to the Pennsylvania State Pastors Conference a year or two ago, offered her own definition of reception, and I will abstract it down to two important words. She talks about it being the work of local churches, where local churches receive the work done at a higher level within the ecclesial structure and embody it in their own life and witness. That suggests that a lot of what we need to talk about in terms of reception is something that involves congregations and their relationships with one another. So remember, it's gradual, and that it involves us in the most local and intimate settings of our churches. That means, among other things, that getting conferences and districts involved early is a no-brainer. But I remind you, it's not always that easy to do it, and I ask you to consider the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which has, or will shortly have, 3 United Methodist annual conferences with 3 resident bishops in their episcopal areas, and there are 7 Evangelical Lutheran Church in America synods. And if my local United Methodist bishop wants to relate to Lutheran bishops that will share her turf after the final consolidation of conferences takes place in Pennsylvania, of those 7 ELCA bishops, she will have her pick of 5. Because as I look at the map, the boundary of her conference shares turf with 5 of the 7 ELCA synods, even if in only one case we appear to be talking about an overlap of 1 county in Pennsylvania. So figuring out how an annual conference relates to its comparable judicatory on the Lutheran side is going to take some careful work and some careful consideration. And someone's going to have to help us figure it out. Otherwise, it's going to be a barrier to us as we try to work together in Pennsylvania. As I go around to judicatories and full communion relationships in my own job, I always ask them, have you thought of a way to involve your partners in full communion in this or that ministry? We need to learn to think that at the district and at the conference level. Whenever we make a plan, we need to ask ourselves, how can we involve our Lutheran partners, or at least get them involved in our planning? At the very least, and as a mere starting point, invite the closest ELCA bishop or the ecumenical representative for that synod to bring greetings at your next annual conference. Those of you in Pennsylvania, I'll monitor this. I go to your annual conferences, I'll see which Lutherans show up. Clergy and congregations need to get involved, and the sooner the better. And you've got some resources to help develop those relationships already that are contained here. One of them you used at least in the run-up before the United Methodist vote. I think the resource was probably made available in about 2006 or so. Go back and revisit it, adapt it to the new scene. We're all good church educators. We know how to take a curriculum piece and make it work in a new setting. Use it to help develop relationships between Lutheran congregations and United Methodist congregations and communities. Remember, someone is going to look down the block or down the road and see not a partner but a competitor. And we need to build relationships to transform that relationship. Common worship. is at least as important as common ministry, and we need to remember that, including GCCUIC. I have this vision of a properly vested Fred leading us in Eucharist according to one of the settings in the New Lutheran Worship Book. And yes, the wine and the grape juice distinction will come into play. But I'll remind you that ecumenically minded Episcopalians have begun to talk about unfermented wine. That may be an ecumenical solution. Pray for one another. For me, a good test of the way our full communion partnerships evolve is if when we go to church on Sunday in the intercessions, our partners and their leaders are mentioned by name in our intercessions. That test we fail much more than we pass. And we need to remember those very simple, very visible expressions of partnership that we now have in full communion. Tell stories to one another in United Methodist circles. Tell stories to Lutherans. Tell stories in ecumenical settings. Tell how your partnership is growing. Witness to it. It's not bragging. It's helping the rest of us capture the vision and reinforce your own struggles to receive the gift of full communion. Now to get technical, the ELCA needs permanent presence on this commission. I think, Gary Harke speaking, full communion means we begin to relate more formally and structurally with each other as well as relationally with each other. And we need to begin to take preliminary steps to integrate ourselves structurally. And United Methodists can't make Lutherans add Methodists to any of their structures, but we can reach out by saying we're going to add Lutherans to our structures. And finally, we have to remember to watch our language. A really great test about how we embody a spirit of full communion is the degree to which we, without thought, speak of we instead of speaking in other ways to distinguish between ourselves and our partners. It is we who share together in ministry and in worship and in witness. As United Methodists and Lutherans, yes, but it is we that we are growing into. And the more we can say we, the fuller our communion, the fuller our koinonia, the fuller our fellowship is going to be.